The scent of old paper and freshly brewed Earl Grey was Clara's favorite way to greet the day. It was a symphony of comfort, a quiet promise that the world, for all its vastness and unpredictability, still held pockets of profound solace. Her bookstore, the Cosmic Corner, was one such pocket, nestled in the heart of Starhaven, a town that truly lived up to its name. Starhaven clung to the rugged coast, its houses painted in soft pastels, their windows gazing out at the restless gray blue of the Atlantic. But it wasn't the ocean that drew most people here. It was the sky. Miles from the city's light pollution, Starhaven boasted some of the clearest, most dazzling night skies in the country. On any given evening, if the clouds held back their silver veils, the heavens would unfurl a tapestry of stars so dense it felt as though you could reach out and pluck them like dewdrops. Clara had been born and raised in Starhaven, and had never truly considered leaving. The town was etched into her soul, much like the constellations were etched into the night sky. She knew every cobblestone on Main Street, every crinkle in the old sea captain's face who bought a newspaper from her every morning, every secret path leading to the best tide pools. But, most of all, she knew the stars. The Cosmic Corner wasn't just a bookstore. It was a sanctuary. Its shelves sagged under the weight of stories, ancient myths, epic fantasies, scientific treatises on astrophysics, dog-eared poetry collections, and modern romances that Clara secretly devoured late at night. Sunlight streamed through the tall, arched windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like tiny, golden galaxies. A large, well-loved leather armchair sat by a crackling fireplace, even in summer for damp coastal mornings, inviting weary readers to linger. And above the counter, a beautiful hand-painted celestial map covered the entire ceiling, each constellation glowing faintly, a constant reminder of the infinite wonders above. This morning, Clara moved with a familiar rhythm, humming a tuneless melody as she unlocked the heavy oak door. The cool morning air, laced with the scent of salt and damp earth, swept in, mingling with the bookstore's own unique fragrance. She switched on the soft amber lights, which chased away the last vestiges of night, making the spines of the books gleam. Then she walked to the small kitchen at the back, where her beloved vintage kettle waited. Soon the comforting hiss of boiling water filled the air, followed by the rich aroma of tea. Clara poured her Earl Grey into her favorite mug, a chipped ceramic one painted with a whimsical representation of Ursa Major. She carried it to the window seat, a cushioned nook overlooking Main Street, and settled in, pulling her knees up to her chest. The town was just beginning to stir. A few early risers walked their dogs. The bakery across the street was already sending out the tantalizing scent of warm bread, and the fishing boats were returning to the harbor, their engines a distant thrum. She took a slow sip of her tea, letting the warmth spread through her. Clara was content, truly. She loved her shop, she loved Starhaven, and she loved the quiet solitude that allowed her to lose herself in stories, both on the page and in the sky. Yet, sometimes a quiet ache would settle in her chest, a soft yearning for something more. She was surrounded by narratives of grand adventures and passionate loves, and while she cherished them, she sometimes wished for a story of her own that wasn't bound within the pages of a book. She often found herself gazing up at the velvet expanse of the night sky, picking out constellations she knew like old friends. Orion, Cassiopeia, Lyra. She'd trace their imaginary lines with her finger, wondering how many other people across vast distances were doing the same. Was there someone out there, she mused, who felt the same quiet wonder, the same gentle loneliness, the same longing for a shared gaze upwards? Her thoughts were interrupted by the chime above the door. A small figure, no older than 7, with bright inquisitive eyes and a mop of unruly brown hair, entered. It was Leo, a frequent visitor who always made a beeline for the fantasy section. "Morning, Clara," he chirped, already halfway to the dragons and wizards. "Good morning, Leo," Clara replied, a warm smile spreading across her face. "Hunting for dragons today?" He nodded vigorously, his eyes wide. "And maybe a wizard who can turn people into stars." Clara chuckled. "A noble quest. Let me know if you need help." Leo was soon lost in a world of his own, perched on a child-sized stool, flipping through a book with a fierce-looking griffin on the cover. Clara watched him, a familiar warmth blooming in her chest. She loved moments like these, seeing the magic of stories ignite in young minds. It was a powerful kind of connection, even if it wasn't the one she sometimes yearned for. The morning unfolded in a gentle rhythm. A few more customers drifted in, Mrs. Gable, who always bought the latest mystery novel, and left with a detailed critique of the previous one. Mr. Henderson, the retired history professor who spent hours poring over ancient texts. And a young couple, new to Starhaven, looking for travel guides to explore the surrounding coastline. Clara moved between them, recommending books, discussing plot twists, and sharing small snippets of Starhaven gossip. As the sun climbed higher, casting longer shadows across the polished wooden floor, Clara noticed a subtle shift in the town's quiet hum. There had been whispers circulating for the past few weeks, like the soft rustle of leaves before a storm. Whispers about a new resident, someone who had rented the old lighthouse keeper's cottage on the bluff overlooking the harbor. It was a secluded spot, rarely occupied, and its new tenant was something of an enigma. The whispers claimed he was a scientist, perhaps an astronomer, drawn to Starhaven's pristine night skies. Clara, despite her love for stories, wasn't one to indulge in idle gossip. But the idea of an astronomer in Starhaven intrigued her. Someone who looked up, like her. Someone who sought answers in the celestial dance. She was restocking the science and nature shelf, carefully arranging a new shipment of astronomy books, when the chime above the door sang out again. This time, the presence that entered was different. The air in the shop seemed to shift, to thicken with an unspoken quiet. He was tall, with broad shoulders encased in a simple dark blue wool sweater. His hair, the color of rich coffee, was a little disheveled, as if he'd just run his hands through it in thought. But it was his eyes that truly captured her attention. They were a startling shade of gray-blue, like a deep winter sky just before dusk, and they held an intensity that was both captivating and a little reserved. He carried himself with a quiet confidence, not arrogant, but self-possessed, like someone comfortable in his own skin, even if that skin was new to this particular patch of earth. He paused just inside the door, taking in the shop. His gaze swept over the shelves, the reading nooks, the celestial map on the ceiling. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips as his eyes lingered on the painted constellations. Clara felt a peculiar flutter in her chest, a sensation she hadn't felt in a long time, if ever. It wasn't just curiosity. It was something warmer, a sense of recognition, as if she'd been expecting him, though she had no reason to. She smoothed down her apron, suddenly self-conscious. He finally walked towards her, his footsteps soft on the wooden floor. "Excuse me," he said, his voice a low, melodic rumble, like distant thunder. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," Clara managed, her voice a little breathier than usual. "Welcome to the Cosmic Corner. Can I help you find anything?" He stopped a few feet from her, his gaze finally meeting hers. Those gray-blue eyes held a surprising warmth up close. "I'm looking for something specific, actually," he began. "An old edition, if you happen to have it. Something on stellar cartography, specifically." Clara's eyebrows rose slightly. Stellar cartography, the mapping of stars. It was an obscure topic, even for a science section. "We have a few books on the subject, of course," she said, gesturing vaguely towards the shelves she'd just been tending. "But an holding edition might be a challenge. Do you have a title or an author?" "It's by a man named Alistair Finch," he replied. "His Atlas of the Celestial Sphere, published in the early 1900s, I believe. A long shot, I know." He gave a small, self-deprecating smile that softened the intensity of his eyes. Clara felt a jolt. "Alistair Finch," she echoed, her voice laced with surprise. "The one with the hand-drawn charts and the slightly fantastical descriptions of nebulae?" His smile widened. "Precisely. You know it?" "I don't just know it," Clara said, a genuine grin now lighting up her face. "I own it, or rather, the shop owns it. It's not for sale, mind you, but it's one of my prized possessions." She gestured towards a locked glass cabinet tucked away in a quiet corner, where she kept her most precious, rare, and delicate volume. "It's tucked away there, for safekeeping. I haven't seen another copy in years." His eyes followed her gaze to the cabinet, a look of genuine astonishment on his face. "Remarkable," he murmured, almost to himself. "I've been searching for a physical copy for ages. Most libraries only have digitized versions, and it just isn't the same, is it?" "Not at all," Clara agreed fervently. "You lose the texture of the paper, the scent of the ink, the very history imbued in its pages. He nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. Indeed, there's a certain magic to holding something that has passed through so many hands, seen so many eyes. He paused, then extended a hand. I apologize. I'm Elias Thorne. I've just moved into the lighthouse keeper's cottage. Clara Maxwell, she replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and surprisingly gentle. A small spark seemed to pass between them, an almost imperceptible current. Welcome to Starhaven, Mr. Thorne. Please, call me Elias, he corrected, his eyes twinkling. And it's a pleasure to meet someone who understands the allure of an antique atlas, Miss Maxwell. Clara, please, she said, feeling a blush creep up her neck. And it's not every day someone walks in asking for Alistair Finch. Are you, by any chance, the astronomer everyone's been whispering about? He chuckled, a low, pleasant sound. Guilty as charged. I'm an astrophysicist. I'm here on a sabbatical, working on a project related to cosmic dust and star formation. Starhaven's skies, as you can imagine, are a dream come true. I can imagine, Clara said, her heart doing a little skip. An astrophysicist. Someone who studied the very things she loved to gaze at. Well, Elias, if you'd like, I can show you the Finch Atlas, even if it's not for sale. I'm always happy to share a good book. His eyes lit up, a genuine warmth radiating from him. I would be incredibly grateful, Clara. Truly. Clara retrieved the heavy leather-bound volume from the cabinet. Its cover was worn smooth with age, its gold-embossed title faded, but still legible. She carried it to the large oak table in the center of the shop, laying it carefully on a felt mat. Elias leaned over it, his expression one of reverence. He traced a finger over the title, then gently opened the book. The pages crackled softly, releasing the delicate scent of aged paper and something else. Something almost like distant starlight. It's even more beautiful than I remember, he murmured, his voice hushed. He carefully turned a page, revealing a magnificent hand-drawn chart of the Andromeda Galaxy, rendered with an artistic flair that blended scientific accuracy with a sense of cosmic wonder. Finch truly believed in the beauty of the universe, didn't he? Not just the cold, hard facts, but the poetry of it all. He did, Clara agreed, leaning in beside him, feeling a comfortable closeness settle between them. He saw the stars as stories, as much as scientific phenomena. A celestial mythology waiting to be deciphered and retold. Elias looked up from the book, his gaze meeting hers again. A celestial mythology, he repeated, a thoughtful smile playing on his lips. I like that. We spend so much time trying to quantify and measure the universe, sometimes we forget to just look at it and let it speak to us. They spent a long while poring over the atlas together, Clara pointing out her favorite illustrations, Elias sharing small, fascinating tidbits of modern astrophysical knowledge that related to Finch's observations. He spoke of dark matter and exoplanets, of the birth and death of stars, weaving complex scientific concepts into narratives that were as captivating as any myth. Clara, in turn, spoke of the ancient Greek legends tied to the constellations, the stories of heroes and gods etched into the very fabric of the sky. The afternoon light began to soften, painting the shop in hues of gold and rose. Clara found herself completely absorbed, not just in the book, but in Elias's presence, in the quiet intensity of his focus, the gentle cadence of his voice. He was different from anyone she had ever met in Starhaven. He saw the world, or rather, the universe, with a depth and wonder that mirrored her own. Finally, with a soft sigh, Elias carefully closed the atlas. Thank you, Clara, he said, looking at her with genuine gratitude. That was a rare treat, a truly special afternoon. My pleasure, Elias, she replied, a warmth spreading through her. You're welcome to come back and look at it any time, or any other book for that matter. He smiled, a slow, captivating smile that reached his eyes. I just might take you up on that. I have a feeling I'll be needing a lot of books during my stay here, and perhaps a friendly face to discuss the universe with. He bought a more modern book on astrophotography, a practical guide that Clara suspected was far too rudimentary for someone of his expertise, but he insisted he needed it. As he paid, their fingers brushed, and that small spark ignited again, lingering this time, a quiet hum beneath her skin. Well, Clara, he said, tucking the book under his arm. It was truly a pleasure. I look forward to our next cosmic discussion. Me too, Elias, she replied, watching him walk towards the door. He paused, just before stepping out, and turned back. Do you ever go up to the old observatory, he asked. Starhaven had a small, mostly defunct observatory on a hill just outside town, used primarily by local astronomy enthusiasts. Clara nodded. Sometimes, especially during meteor showers. There's a good one expected next week, he said, his eyes scanning the celestial map on the ceiling for a moment. The Leonids might be worth the climb. He didn't explicitly invite her, but the suggestion hung in the air, a silent question. Clara felt a thrill course through her. I'll keep that in mind, she said, trying to keep her voice even. He smiled again, a hint of something unreadable in his gaze, then stepped out, and the chime above the door sang its farewell. Clara stood by the counter for a long moment, the scent of old paper and Earl Grey still comforting, but now mingled with a new subtle fragrance, perhaps the faintest hint of his cologne, or simply the fresh crisp air he had brought in with him. The shop, which had felt so complete and full just hours ago, now seemed to hold a new, quiet anticipation. She looked up at the celestial map on the ceiling, tracing the familiar lines of Leo, the lion, with her finger. Next week. The Leonids. A meteor shower. She had always watched them alone, a private communion with the cosmos. But the thought of watching them with Elias, with someone who saw the stars not just as points of light, but as a living, breathing, story-filled universe, sent a shiver of excitement through her. The quiet ache in her chest, the gentle loneliness had lessened, replaced by a soft, hopeful flutter. Perhaps, she mused, her own story was finally beginning to unfurl, written not on paper, but across the vast, twinkling canvas of the Starhaven sky. She spent the rest of the evening rereading passages from Alistair Finch's Atlas, her mind drifting between the intricate beauty of the constellations and the startling gray-blue of Elias's eyes, a quiet anticipation building within her, as boundless and luminous as the stars themselves. The night was falling, painting the windows in hues of deep indigo, and Clara felt a stillness settle over her, a sense of being on the precipice of something wonderful, something stellar. The indigo deepened to a velvety black, pinpricked with the first shy stars. Clara carefully closed the atlas, its weight comforting in her hands. The intricate maps of the heavens seemed to swirl before her inner eye, each constellation a silent story, each nebula a whisper of cosmic dust and creation. But overlaying these familiar wonders was the unexpected image of Elias's eyes, a startling gray-blue, like the deep ocean reflecting a winter sky, yet holding a warmth that belied their cool hue. She walked to the window, pressing her hand against the cool pane. The air outside was crisp, carrying the faint, clean scent of pine and something else. Something mineral, like distant rock, unique to this mountain area. Starhaven wasn't just a location. It was an entity, a place that hummed with a quiet, ancient energy. She felt it resonate within her, a stirring of her own spirit that had for too long been solely focused on the distant and the theoretical. Undressing slowly, she let her thoughts wander. Elias hadn't just spoken about the observatory. He had felt it, breathed it. There was a reverence in his tone, a proprietary gentleness that spoke of deep roots. Who was he, beyond the kind stranger who offered a tour? A local? A fellow scientist, perhaps, but with a different kind of expertise, a more hands-on, deeply ingrained knowledge of the land and its instruments. The thought of seeing him again tomorrow, of working in the same hallowed space, sent a ripple of excitement through her. It was an unfamiliar sensation, a pleasant hum beneath the usual thrum of scientific curiosity. She slipped into her nightclothes, a soft cotton chemise, and slid under the heavy quilt. The room was cool, but the covers were warm, cocooning her. She closed her eyes, but sleep didn't come easily. Her mind replayed moments, the way his dark hair fell across his brow, the gentle strength of his hands as he gestured, the low, melodic timbre of his voice. She was usually so disciplined, so focused, yet tonight, her thoughts were a constellation of wonder and anticipation, each star a memory of Elias, each nebula a dream of tomorrow. She imagined the vastness of the universe, and for the first time, felt a connection to it that wasn't purely intellectual. It felt personal. A soft sigh escaped her lips, a quiet acknowledgement of a shift within her, a quiet unfolding. The night deepened, but her mind remained alight. The first blush of dawn painted the sky in pearlescent hues, seeping through the gaps in the curtains. Clara awoke with a surprising lightness of spirit, a tangible sense of purpose that felt more expansive than usual. The initial jolt of caffeine from her strong morning coffee usually jump-started her analytical mind, but today it was something else entirely, a quiet hum of expectation, a feeling of being precisely where she was meant to be. She dressed in practical but comfortable clothes, sturdy trousers, a warm wool sweater, and sensible boots. Her work at the Starhaven Observatory was to spearhead a new initiative, the Deep Sky Legacy Project. This involved meticulously cataloging and analyzing data from the observatory's most powerful telescope, searching for subtle gravitational lensing signatures that could indicate the presence of previously undetected exoplanets, particularly those in the habitable zones of distant stars. It was a painstaking, long-term endeavor, requiring both cutting-edge technology and a profound sense of patience and dedication. The scent of brewing coffee and fresh baked bread led her to the small communal dining hall of the observatory's living quarters. A few other researchers, mostly older men with kindly weathered faces, were already there, hunched over bowls of oatmeal and steaming mugs. They offered her polite nods and quiet greetings, their conversations a low murmur of scientific jargon and local weather predictions. Clara, usually content in her own thoughts, found herself scanning the room, a faint disappointment surfacing when she didn't see him. "Oh, of course," she chided herself. He likely had a different schedule, different duties. After a quick, fortifying breakfast, she made her way to the main observatory building, a domed structure that dominated the peak. The air was exhilaratingly crisp, carrying the scent of frost and pine. Inside, it was a hive of quiet activity. Technicians moved with practiced ease between control panels, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of monitors. The hum of machinery was a constant, reassuring presence. Her office, a small, functional room off the main control center, was already set up with her personal laptop and a direct link to the observatory's central server. She spent the first hour familiarizing herself with the Starhaven system, its unique calibration protocols, and the vast archives of data. The Starlight Sentinel telescope, as it was affectionately known, was a marvel of engineering, capable of capturing light from billions of light years away. Just as she was diving into the initial data streams, a shadow fell across her desk. "Dr. Vance?" The voice was low, melodic, and instantly recognizable. Clara looked up, her heart doing a surprising little leap. Elias stood in her doorway, a sheaf of schematics tucked under one arm. He wore a heavy knit sweater the color of moss, and practical work trousers. His hair, a rich dark brown, was slightly tousled, as if he'd just come in from the brisk morning air. And his eyes, they were as she remembered, that captivating gray-blue, now crinkling at the corners with a soft, understated smile. "Elias," she replied, her voice a little breathier than she intended. "Good morning." "Morning," he echoed. "I was told you'd be getting acquainted with the Sentinel. I'm Elias Thorne, the lead systems engineer here. My primary role is to ensure the Sentinel is always in peak condition, and to assist researchers with any technical needs or specialized data acquisition." He extended a hand, and Clara took it. His grip was firm, warm, and sent a pleasant jolt up her arm. "Clara Vance, lead astronomer for the Deep Sky Legacy Project." She introduced herself properly, feeling a faint blush rise to her cheeks. It felt formal, yet intimate, after their informal meeting yesterday. "Yes, I know," he said, his smile widening slightly. "Dr. Petrov spoke very highly of your work. He's quite excited about this project, says you're one of the best." "High praise indeed," Clara chuckled, feeling more at ease. "I'm looking forward to getting started. The Sentinel is magnificent." "She is," Elias agreed, a note of genuine affection in his voice. "And she requires a lot of care. I came to offer you a more in-depth orientation to her operational nuances, and to see if you have any immediate requirements for your project setup." Elias spent the next few hours with Clara, guiding her through the intricate labyrinth of the Sentinel's control systems. He explained the unique algorithms for atmospheric compensation, the subtle calibrations required for Starhaven's specific altitude and air density, and the complex interplay of optical and digital components. He spoke with an easy authority, his explanations clear and concise, effortlessly translating highly technical jargon into understandable terms. Clara, with her own deep understanding of astrophysics, found herself absorbing every detail, impressed not just by his knowledge, but by the quiet passion that underscored his words. "The Sentinel isn't just a machine," he said, running a gentle hand over a cool metal panel covered in blinking lights. "She's an extension of our collective human curiosity. Every piece of her is designed to reach further, to see clearer, to understand more. And she listens to the sky." Clara found herself leaning forward, captivated. "That's a beautiful way to put it, Elias. Most engineers I've worked with focus purely on functionality. You imbue it with something else." He turned, his gray-blue eyes meeting hers, a flicker of something unreadable passing between them. "Perhaps it's living in Starhaven. This place has a way of reminding you that everything is connected. The mountains, the sky, the instruments, they all sing the same song if you know how to listen." Their collaboration quickly fell into a comfortable rhythm. Clara would outline her scientific objectives, detailing the specific stellar regions she intended to survey, the types of data she needed. Elias, in turn, would suggest the optimal observation parameters, fine-tuning the telescope's focus, adjusting for potential atmospheric interference, and configuring the data streams to her precise specifications. He anticipated her needs before she even voiced them, often suggesting a solution to a potential problem she hadn't yet fully considered. One afternoon, as they were troubleshooting a minor glitch in a data transfer protocol, their heads bent close over a shared monitor, their shoulders occasionally brushing. The air between them seemed to crackle with an unspoken energy. Clara found herself acutely aware of his proximity, the subtle scent of pine and something distinctly masculine, the warmth radiating from his arm, the quiet intensity of his focus. "It seems to be a conflict in the packet sequencing," Clara murmured, pointing to a line of code. "Yes," Elias agreed, his voice a low rumble beside her ear. "The older system isn't handshaking correctly with the new acquisition module. We need to build a temporary bridge protocol." He began typing swiftly, his fingers dancing across the keyboard with a practiced grace. Clara watched, fascinated, as lines of code unfurled across the screen, elegant and efficient. "You're remarkably fast," she commented, a small smile playing on her lips. He glanced at her, a faint smile touching his own. "Years of practice, Dr. Vance. The Sentinel waits for no one, especially when there's a good observation window." "Please, call me Clara," she corrected softly. "And I think you just earned yourself a few extra hours of prime telescope time, Elias." He chuckled, a warm, rich sound. "Consider it my contribution to the Deep Sky legacy." As the days turned into a week, Clara found her routine at Starhaven settling into a satisfying groove. Her work was progressing splendidly, the Sentinel proving even more capable than she had hoped, thanks in no small part to Elias's meticulous care and deep understanding. But beyond the professional satisfaction, there was a growing personal warmth. Elias became an indispensable part of her day. Their morning check-ins evolved into longer conversations over coffee, discussing everything from the latest astronomical discoveries to the local Starhaven wildlife. Their working sessions in the control room were punctuated by shared laughter, quiet observations, and a burgeoning sense of camaraderie that was quickly deepening into something more profound. She learned that Elias had grown up in Starhaven, his family having been involved with the observatory since its inception generations ago. He spoke of the mountains as if they were old friends, of the night sky as a living canvas he'd known since childhood. He had gone away for university, studying electrical engineering and astrophysics, but had always known he would return. "This is where I belong, Clara," he'd told her one evening, his gaze fixed on the distant, snow-capped peaks. "My roots are here, and so is my purpose." Clara, a self-proclaimed nomad of the scientific world, found herself oddly drawn to his groundedness. She had always chased the next discovery, the next grant, the next distant observatory. Her life had been a series of temporary homes, her heart perpetually reaching for the stars, rarely settling on the earthly. But here, in Starhaven with Elias, she felt a different kind of pull, a gravitational force she hadn't anticipated. One afternoon, as they were finishing up a particularly complex calibration, the main power flickered, then died, plunging the control room into a momentary eerie silence, save for the soft hum of emergency lights. "Standby power just kicked in," Elias announced calmly, already moving towards a diagnostic panel. "Looks like a local grid issue. Happens sometimes with the older lines feeding the peak. Shouldn't affect primary telescope functions, but we'll be on backup generators for a bit." Clara watched him, impressed by his calm efficiency. He moved with purpose, his hands instinctively going to the right switches, his eyes scanning the readouts. He was in his element, a master of his domain. "Anything I can do to help?" she asked, stepping closer. "Just stand by, Clara," he said, a faint grin touching his lips as he flicked a switch. "Sometimes the best help is a good pair of eyes and a steady presence." She smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through her. She liked being his steady presence. They spent the next hour monitoring the backup systems, the soft, amber glow of the emergency lights casting long shadows across the room. The usual bustle was replaced by a quiet intimacy. Elias explained the intricacies of the observatory's redundant power systems, the meticulous planning that went into protecting such a valuable scientific instrument. Clara listened, occasionally interjecting with insightful questions, appreciating the depth of his knowledge and his unwavering commitment to his work. When the main power finally surged back, filling the room with the familiar hum and bright lights, Elias let out a soft sigh of relief. "All clear," he announced, turning to her. "Crisis averted, thanks to the diligence of our night shift engineer who flagged the potential issue before it became catastrophic. And thanks to the diligence of the day shift engineer who fixed it," Clara added, her gaze lingering on his. He met her eyes, and for a moment, the air thickened with an unspoken acknowledgement. The shared experience, however minor, had deepened their connection. The sky outside the observatory dome was a tapestry of impossible beauty, the kind of darkness that only a place like Starhaven could offer. Millions of stars, sharp and brilliant, glittered against the inky black, a cosmic canvas that seemed to stretch into eternity. It was late, long after the last of the other researchers had retired. Clara was making one final check of her data logs when Elias appeared in her doorway, a thermos of tea in his hand. "Thought you might be up," he said, his voice soft in the quiet of the empty control room. "Figured you could use some warmth. It's an Earl Grey blend, your preference, I recall." Clara's heart warmed at the thoughtful gesture. She had mentioned her love for Earl Grey in passing days ago. "You remembered. Thank you, Elias. That's incredibly kind." "My pleasure," he replied, handing her a steaming mug. "I'm heading up to the viewing deck for a bit. The seeing conditions are exceptional tonight. Want to join me?" The invitation felt less like a casual suggestion and more like a quiet plea, a shared understanding. Clara didn't hesitate. "I'd love to." They walked in comfortable silence, the only sounds the soft crunch of their boots on the gravel path and the gentle whisper of the wind through the sparse mountain pines. The air was cold, crisp, and alive with the scent of winter. The viewing deck was a wide open platform, a short distance from the main dome, equipped with a few smaller portable telescopes and comfortable reclining chairs. Tonight, however, it was the naked eye that held the true wonder. They settled into two adjacent chairs, leaning back, their gazes fixed on the heavens. The Milky Way was a luminous river of light, stretching across the sky in a breathtaking arc. Nebulae, invisible from light-polluted cities, appeared as faint, ethereal smudges of gas and dust. "It's humbling, isn't it?" Clara murmured, her voice barely a whisper. "To think of the sheer scale of it all. Billions of galaxies, billions of stars, and here we are, two small beings on a tiny planet, trying to make sense of it." "Humble, yes," Elias agreed, his voice equally soft. "But also exhilarating, to be part of something so vast, so ancient, yet to have the capacity to comprehend even a fraction of it. That's truly remarkable." He took a sip of his tea, then continued, "My grandfather used to say the stars were our oldest storytellers. Each one a word, each constellation a chapter, and we at the observatory are just learning to read the language." "Your grandfather sounds like a wise man," Clara said, turning her head slightly to look at him. In the faint starlight, his profile was etched in sharp relief, his eyes reflecting the distant stars. "He was," Elias confirmed. "He taught me everything about this place, about the sky. He instilled in me this reverence. That's why I came back. It felt like coming home to a legacy." "I don't have that kind of legacy," Clara confessed, a rare note of vulnerability in her voice. "My family are brilliant, but they're doctors, lawyers, engineers of the terrestrial kind. My love for the stars felt almost like an anomaly, a strange detour. I've always chased the next scientific frontier, never really found a home in the traditional sense, just places where the telescopes were powerful enough to see what I needed to see." But you found a purpose, Elias countered gently, his gaze still on the sky. And sometimes, purpose is a stronger anchor than legacy. Clara was quiet for a moment, absorbing his words. He was right. Her purpose, voici her anchor. But lately, she felt a yearning for something more, something that intertwined with that purpose, rather than standing separate from it. Do you ever feel small? She asked, a sudden thought bubbling to the surface. Looking at all this, do you ever feel insignificant? Elias finally turned his head, his gray-blue eyes meeting hers in the dim light. Never insignificant, Clara. Connected, like a single thread in an infinite tapestry. Knowing that we exist, that we can observe, that we can question. That's the opposite of insignificant. It's a miracle. His words resonated deeply within her. It was a perspective she hadn't fully articulated herself, but one that felt profoundly true. They sat in silence for a long time after that, simply basking in the cosmic grandeur, the warmth of their shared tea, and the quiet comfort of each other's presence. As the night deepened, and the chill grew more pronounced, Elias stirred. "We should probably head in soon," he said, though his voice held a note of reluctance. Clara nodded but made no move to rise. "Just a few more minutes," she pleaded softly. "It's too beautiful to leave." He smiled, a gentle, understanding smile. "I know the feeling." He reached out, his hand hovering for a moment, then gently took hers, his fingers intertwining with hers. His touch was warm, firm, and incredibly reassuring. It was a silent gesture, a connection forged under the vast, watchful eyes of the universe. Her breath hitched slightly. His thumb brushed over the back of her hand, a feather-light touch that sent shivers down her arm, not from cold, but from a burgeoning warmth in her chest. She squeezed his hand lightly in return, a silent acknowledgement of the connection that had been building between them, an unspoken understanding that transcended words. "Clara," he began, his voice dropping to a near whisper, his gaze still locked with hers. The stars seemed to reflect in the depths of his eyes, creating miniature galaxies. "There's something about this place, and about you. It feels like coming into focus." She felt her own gaze soften, a quiet emotion welling up within her. "I feel it too, Elias. Like I'm finally seeing things clearly. Like Starhaven isn't just a place to observe the stars, but a place where new stars are being born, right here, between us." He squeezed her hand again, a silent promise hanging in the cold night air, as luminous and boundless as the constellations above them. The night was vast, full of mysteries, but for Clara, the most compelling mystery was the one unfolding right beside her. The story was just beginning, written in starlight and whispered hopes under the silent, witnessing gaze of the ancient universe. The path back to their respective cottages was uneven, a winding track of compacted earth and scattered pebbles, barely visible in the faint starlight that now seemed to shine with a new, intimate brilliance. Leo's hand remained clasped around hers, a steady, comforting presence that grounded Clara even as her mind soared. The cold air, once sharp and biting, now felt crisp and invigorating, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. They walked in comfortable silence for a long while, their footsteps crunching softly in unison, a quiet rhythm against the vast quietude of the mountain. Clara found herself acutely aware of every sensation, the subtle warmth emanating from Leo's palm, the rough texture of his jacket sleeve brushing her arm, the way his shoulders occasionally bumped hers. It was a symphony of small intimacies, each note resonating deep within her. She glanced at him, his profile illuminated by the distant glow of the observatory, and saw a gentle smile playing on his lips, as if he too were lost in the quiet wonder of the moment. "It's incredible, isn't it?" Leo finally murmured, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through her hand. "How small we are, and yet how much we can feel." Clara squeezed his hand in return. "It's humbling," she agreed, her own voice barely a whisper. "And exhilarating. To think of all that potential, all that creation, out there and in here." She gestured vaguely between them, a shy acknowledgement of his earlier words. He chuckled softly. "Precisely. The universe has a way of putting things into perspective, doesn't it?" They reached her cottage first, a cozy stone structure nestled among a small grove of ancient fir trees. A soft light from her living room window spilled onto the porch, a welcoming beacon. The thought of stepping inside alone, leaving the starlit night and Leo's steady presence behind, brought a surprising pang of reluctance. They paused at her doorstep, the air suddenly thick with unspoken sentiments. Leo released her hand slowly, his fingers lingering for a moment before letting go completely. The absence of his touch left a faint chill, a vacuum in the space between them. "Thank you, Leo," Clara said, meeting his gaze. Her heart fluttered beneath her ribs like a trapped bird. Tonight was... His smile deepened, reaching his eyes, which twinkled with an almost celestial light. "The pleasure was all mine, Clara. Truly, it's not every day you meet someone who sees the universe quite the way you do." He paused, then added softly, "Or makes a night sky even more captivating." A blush crept up Clara's neck, warming her cheeks despite the chill. She searched for words, but none seemed adequate. She just nodded, her gaze locked with his. The moment stretched, full of unspoken questions and burgeoning possibilities. For a heartbeat, she thought he might lean in or say something more profound, but he simply held her gaze, a silent conversation passing between them. "Good night, Clara," he said finally, his voice a gentle caress. "Good night, Leo," she replied, her voice a little breathy. He turned and walked away, his silhouette gradually swallowed by the shadows, only the faint crunch of his footsteps marking his departure. Clara watched until he was completely out of sight. Then, with a sigh that was both wistful and content, she slipped inside her cottage. Warmth of the fireplace immediately enveloped her, a stark contrast to the crisp night air. She shed her heavy coat, but the warmth from Leah's hand seemed to linger on hers, a ghost of a touch. She moved through her small living room, turning on a few more lamps, trying to dispel the lingering magic of the night with familiar routine. But it was no use. His words replayed in her mind. New stars are being born, right here between us, and the way he had looked at her, as if he truly saw her, not just the astrophysicist, but Clara, the woman who felt the cosmic ballet in her soul. She usually spent her evenings poring over data, writing papers, or losing herself in complex equations. Her work was her passion, her life, a solitary pursuit that had always felt sufficient. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, the quiet hum of her cottage felt different. A little emptier, perhaps, or simply more aware of the space waiting to be filled. She made herself a cup of chamomile tea, her hands still tingling, and settled into her armchair by the window. The vast, inky canvas of the sky was still visible through the glass, punctuated by the same ancient stars she had studied for years. Yet, tonight, they seemed to wink at her with knowing amusement, as if privy to the secret unfolding in her heart. Clara, the rational scientist, found herself smiling at the stars, a gesture she hadn't made since she was a child. The universe, she mused, was full of variables, and Leo Maxwell had just become the most intriguing one in her meticulously ordered equation. Sleep, she knew, would be a long time coming. Her mind was too busy charting a new constellation, one forming right there, in the uncharted territory of her own emotions. Why? The next morning, Clara awoke to the insistent chirping of a robin outside her window, a sound that usually brought a sense of calm purpose to her day. Today, however, it merely served as a gentle reminder that the world had continued to spin, carrying her further from the luminous magic of the previous night. She stretched, her muscles still a little stiff from the cold, and padded to the kitchen to brew her customary strong coffee. Her usual morning routine was a solitary affair. Coffee, a quick scan of scientific journals online, and then off to the observatory. Today, however, there was an unfamiliar flutter in her stomach, a nervous anticipation she hadn't felt since her first major presentation at a conference. She found herself wondering if she would see Leo, and if so, what would they say? Would the spell of the previous night dissipate in the harsh light of day, reduced to a mere pleasant memory? Deciding to face the day head-on, Clara dressed in her practical, comfortable clothes, a sensible sweater and sturdy trousers, and made her way to the observatory's common room, where the aroma of freshly brewed coffee always beckoned. As she pushed open the door, her gaze immediately landed on him. Leo was leaning against the counter, a mug in his hand, engaged in what appeared to be a light-hearted conversation with Dr. Eris, one of the senior researchers. He looked just as she remembered him, perhaps even more so in the gentle morning light. His hair a little disheveled, a hint of stubble on his jaw, and those striking intelligent eyes that seemed to hold the universe within them. As if sensing her presence, Leo turned. His eyes met hers. and the easy smile he'd worn for Dr. Aris softened, becoming more intimate, more direct. "Clara, good morning," he said, his voice warm and inviting. "Good morning, Leo," she replied, a genuine smile blooming on her face, dispelling her earlier apprehension. "Dr. Aris." Dr. Aris nodded, then excused himself, leaving them alone. The common room, usually bustling at this hour, was momentarily quiet. "Slept well?" Leo asked, pushing a steaming mug of coffee towards her, as if he'd anticipated her arrival and her usual order. It was a small gesture, but it sent a surprising warmth through her. "Eventually," Clara admitted, a hint of self-deprecating humor in her tone. "My mind was rather active. And yours?" He chuckled, taking a sip from his own mug. "Similar, though I managed to get a few hours in before the sun decided to show off." He leaned back against the counter, his posture relaxed. Still thinking about those protostars, Clara felt a comfortable ease settle over her. This was familiar territory, a language they both spoke fluently. Among other things, it's rare to encounter such a compelling anomaly. She took a grateful sip of the coffee, its rich warmth a balm. "What brings you here so early? I thought your shift was later today." "Just catching up on some data from last night, actually," Leo explained. "And then I thought I'd swing by for coffee. This place has the best brew on the mountain, wouldn't you agree?" His eyes twinkled. "Though I confess, I might have also been hoping to conveniently bump into a certain brilliant astrophysicist." Clara felt her cheeks flush again, a pleasant warmth spreading through her. She tried to maintain a semblance of professional composure, but a soft smile betrayed her. "A convenient coincidence, then." "Indeed," he confirmed, his gaze lingering on hers. "Speaking of which, I was reviewing some of the preliminary observations from the new spectrograph last night, and it occurred to me that some of your work on stellar nurseries might be incredibly relevant to what we're seeing in the Perseus arm. The spectral lines for certain heavy elements are peculiar." Clara's scientific curiosity immediately piqued. "Peculiar how?" She moved closer, setting her mug down. "Are we talking about unusual abundances, or more about their excitation states?" Leo's expression brightened, clearly delighted by her immediate engagement. "Both, actually. The emission spectrum is showing some unexpected shifts, almost as if there's an energy source we're not fully accounting for, or perhaps a unique interaction with a previously unobserved dark matter filament." They fell into an easy animated discussion, their voices intertwining as they delved into the intricacies of astrophysics. Clara found herself explaining her models for star formation in dense molecular clouds, while Leo elaborated on his observations of unusual spectral signatures from emerging stellar systems. It was exhilarating, a dance of intellect and shared passion. He listened intently, asking insightful questions, his mind clearly operating on a level that matched her own. She, in turn, found his perspective refreshing, his ability to connect disparate pieces of data illuminating. "You know," Leo said, after a particularly engaging exchange about the implications of their findings, "this could actually be a significant breakthrough. If we could combine your theoretical models with my observational data, we might be able to offer a much more comprehensive understanding of these nascent stars." He paused, a hopeful glint in his eye. "Would you be open to collaborating, even just informally for now? I think our approaches could really complement each other." Clara didn't hesitate. "I'd like that very much, Leo. I think our approaches complement each other. It's exciting to think about what we could uncover." The idea of working alongside him, of sharing not just a moment under the stars, but the very process of unraveling their mysteries, filled her with a profound sense of anticipation. It wasn't just about the science. It was about the connection, the shared journey of discovery. Over the next few days, their informal collaboration quickly blossomed into a natural partnership. Their mornings began with coffee in the common room, often stretching into animated discussions at one of their workstations. Clara would share her complex simulations of gravitational collapse and accretion disks, and Leo would bring up his detailed spectral analyses and photometric data. They challenged each other, pushed the boundaries of their understanding, and celebrated small breakthroughs with a shared enthusiasm that made the arduous work feel lighter, more joyful. Clara found herself looking forward to their interactions with an eagerness that surprised her. Leo wasn't just brilliant. He was patient, kind, and possessed a dry wit that often made her laugh aloud. a sound she rarely heard herself make in the observatory. He had a way of explaining complex concepts with a clarity that was both elegant and accessible, and he listened to her ideas with a genuine respect that made her feel truly seen, truly valued. One afternoon, while they were huddled over a series of perplexing spectrographs, Leo leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "This particular emission line is really throwing me for a loop," he confessed, gesturing at the screen. "It suggests a temperature and composition that just don't fit with any known stellar evolution model for a protostar of this mass." Clara peered closer at the data, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Perhaps it's not the star itself, but its immediate environment. Have you considered the influence of the surrounding molecular cloud's magnetic field on the plasma dynamics?" She tapped a specific region of the graph. "If there's an unusually strong localized field, it could be exciting these specific elements in a way that mimics a higher temperature, or even creating unique isotopic signatures." Leo's eyes widened, a spark of insight igniting within them. "Clara, that's brilliant. I hadn't even considered the magnetic field to that extent. My models assume a more uniform, ambient field. But if there's a localized anomaly..." He trailed off, already opening new simulation parameters on his computer. "We could cross-reference it with some of the radio astronomy data for polarized emissions. If there's a correlation, that would be a significant indicator." For the next hour, they worked in a focused synergy, their fingers flying across keyboards, their murmurs and exclamations filling the quiet lab. When Leo finally pulled up a new simulation that incorporated Clara's hypothesis, a distinct pattern emerged, mirroring the peculiar emission line they had been struggling with. "There!" Leo exclaimed, pointing at the screen, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. "That's it. The magnetic field interaction model fits almost perfectly. Clara, you've just helped unlock a major piece of this puzzle." He looked at her, his eyes shining with admiration. "You have an incredible intuition for these things." Clara felt a flush of pleasure. "It's about seeing the whole picture," she demurred modestly, though her heart swelled with pride. "Your data collection is so precise, it gives us the clarity to make these connections." Their shared success created a palpable buzz between them, a sense of camaraderie that went beyond mere professional respect. "We should celebrate this," Leo suggested, leaning back again, a relaxed smile on his face. "And maybe get some fresh air. My brain feels like it's been in a particle accelerator all day." He glanced out the window, where the afternoon sun was beginning to cast long shadows across the mountain. "There's a beautiful trail nearby. Leads to an old fire lookout with a stunning view. Would you be interested?" Clara hesitated for only a moment. Her usual response would be to continue working to capitalize on the momentum. But the thought of an evening spent exploring with Leo, away from the hum of computers and the sterile environment of the lab, was surprisingly appealing. "I'd like that very much, Leo," she said, her smile genuine and unreserved. "A change of scenery would be welcome." 1. The trail was winding and moderately challenging, leading them through a dense forest of towering pines and ancient oaks. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the earthy scent of damp soil and fallen leaves. Clara, usually so immersed in the abstract world of equations and cosmic phenomena, found herself acutely aware of the tangible beauty around her. The intricate patterns of sunlight filtering through the canopy, the rustle of unseen creatures in the undergrowth, the vibrant green of moss clinging to weathered rock. They walked mostly in comfortable silence, occasionally pointing out a particularly striking bird or a unique rock formation. Leo seemed to know the trail well, navigating the uneven terrain with an easy grace. He would sometimes offer her a hand over a tricky route, or pause to let her catch her breath, his attentiveness subtle but reassuring. "I come up here often," Leo explained as they ascended a particularly steep section. "It helps to clear my head. Sometimes, when you're staring at data for too long, you lose sight of the bigger picture, the sheer wonder of it all. Coming out here, under the vastness of the sky and surrounded by the quiet resilience of nature, puts it all back into perspective." "I understand that completely," Clara responded, her breath a little short from the climb. "My work can be all-consuming. Sometimes I forget there's a world beyond the lens, beyond the numbers." She found it easy to open up to him, to share thoughts she rarely voiced to anyone else. Before I came here, I used to live in a bustling city. The constant noise, the artificial lights, it was suffocating after a while. This place, this quiet, it feels like home in a way I never expected. Leo nodded, his gaze thoughtful. I grew up in a small town too, not unlike this one actually. I think that's why the cosmos always called to me. It felt like the ultimate quiet, the ultimate vastness, a place where you could truly lose yourself and find yourself at the same time. He paused, then looked at her, a gentle smile playing on his lips. What drew you to astrophysics, Clara? Was there a specific moment, or was it a gradual realization? Clara considered this. It was a clear night, when I was very young, maybe 7 or 8. My grandmother took me out into her backyard. Far from the city lights, she pointed out the constellations, told me stories about them. But what truly captivated me was the sheer number of stars, the endless depths. I remember asking her, "What's beyond that, Grandma?" And she just smiled and said, "More, always more." From that moment, I knew I did understand the more. She chuckled softly. It sounds rather idealistic, I suppose, for a scientist. Not at all, Leo countered immediately, his voice earnest. That's the purest form of scientific curiosity. The wonder, the desire to know what's more. That's what drives us, isn't it? The magic of discovery is rooted in that initial awe. He looked at her, his expression warm. I think that's what makes your work so profound. You're not just crunching numbers. You're trying to grasp the very essence of creation. His words resonated deeply with Clara, touching a part of her that often felt isolated. It was rare to find someone who understood the profound, almost spiritual connection she felt to her work. And you, Leo, what was your more moment? He paused, his gaze drifting upwards towards the patches of sky visible through the trees. For me, it was a sense of belonging, strangely enough. I felt like a small cog in a vast machine, and the universe gave me a context for that. It showed me that even the smallest particle has a role, a purpose, in the grand cosmic dance. It was comforting, in a way, to realize that we're all made of stardust, and we're all connected to something so much larger than ourselves. He met her gaze, a vulnerable openness in his eyes. It made me feel less alone. Clara felt a profound sense of connection with him, a shared vulnerability that transcended their professional roles. She realized that beneath his confident exterior lay a thoughtful, sensitive soul, much like her own. They continued their ascent, the conversation flowing easily between personal revelations and scientific musings, each story weaving another thread into the growing tapestry of their understanding. Finally, they reached the summit. The old fire lookout, a weathered wooden structure, stood proudly against the vast expanse of the sky. From this vantage point, the entire valley spread out below them, a patchwork of forests and meadows, with the distant glint of a river snaking through it. The observatory, a cluster of gleaming domes, looked like a miniature village perched on a neighboring peak. The sun was now dipping towards the horizon, painting the clouds in hues of orange, pink, and purple. "Oh, Leo," Clara breathed, completely captivated by the breathtaking panorama. "It's magnificent." He stood beside her, his shoulder brushing hers, his gaze equally fixed on the horizon. "I thought you'd like it." As the sun sank lower, casting long, dramatic shadows, the first stars began to prick through the twilight canvas. One by one they appeared, faint at first, then growing brighter, until the sky was ablaze with a familiar, yet always awe-inspiring display. It wasn't the magnified view through a telescope, but the raw, unfiltered majesty of the universe laid bare. "It's funny," Clara murmured, leaning against the railing, her voice soft. "We spend so much time trying to dissect it, to understand its mechanics, and then you come to a place like this, and it all just gee. It's simply beautiful." Leo turned to her, his profile outlined by the fading light. "And that's the beauty of it, isn't it? To appreciate the mystery even as we seek to unravel it. To find the profound in the simple and the infinite in the intimate." He reached out, his hand gently covering hers where it rested on the railing. His touch was warm, reassuring. "Just like the stars, Clara. Some are ancient, some are new, some are still forming, and each one, in its own way, is a universe unto itself." He squeezed her hand, his gaze holding hers with an intensity that made her heart pound. The words he spoke were about the stars, but their meaning, she knew, was for them. In the quiet immensity of the mountain peak, Under the silent, witnessing gaze of the ancient universe, Clara felt a new star stirring within her own universe, burning brighter with every shared breath, every lingering touch. The story, still unfolding, was now written not just in starlight, but in the growing warmth of shared dreams and whispered hopes. He turned from the panoramic view, his gaze, now soft and vulnerable, meeting hers. "Clara," he began, his voice a low murmur against the wind. "My universe feels complete with you in it. These stars, they've always felt like distant wonders, but now, with you, they feel like home." He squeezed her hand gently, a silent promise in his touch. A soft sigh escaped her lips, a mixture of wonder and profound relief. "And mine, Alex," she whispered back, leaning into him, her head resting on his shoulder. "It's as if I've been waiting for this particular star, this particular warmth, all my life." He wrapped an arm around her, pulling her closer still, and she felt the steady rhythm of his heart against her own. The chill of the mountain air was forgotten, replaced by a profound, comforting heat that radiated between them. As the first hint of dawn painted the horizon with gentle hues, they stood together, two souls intertwined under a canvas of fading stars and nascent sun. The new star within Clara's universe wasn't just stirring, it had ignited, casting a brilliant, enduring light that promised a lifetime of shared dawns and countless starry nights together. Their story, etched in the cosmic dust, and the beating of two hearts, had finally found its beautiful, shimmering beginning.